This is in response to Paul Krugman's article of August 18th in reference to war. One of the great things about reading Mr. Krugman is he does bring up a lot of things either that I had a little partial knowledge of or has a fair amount of knowledge of, and then he synthesizes those things. The point of his article today was on war. And as far as I'm concerned, all wars are about geography. People say they're about religion. People say they're about pride. People say it's about protecting other people. No, it's all bullshit. It's all about geography. And as he pointed out in the article today, yes, it's to get diamonds wherever diamonds are, basically to enrich themselves. As if not only are ruling families or ruling juntas or ruling parties basically more like war criminals or more like the mafia, just having their little turf wars. That's why they would go to war. We see a lot of war right now on and off in various areas of Africa. We've seen many African despots just extremely enrich themselves over the years. And then Mr. Krugman also points out very distinctly that wars really never pay. Wars really never even pay, even for those who are victorious. And especially in the post-industrialized world that we're in right now, you want to take over a country, you got to destroy the country so you can take over the country. And then what's the point of taking over the country then? Because you got to rebuild it back up from scratch. And he brought up a couple other things that I thought were very, very important. One was about our good friend Putin in Russia, who actually I'd heard this before a little bit, was that the Russian economy has been faltering for a while. They don't really have a whole lot of good stuff to sell outside of oil. They have some other things to sell. Well, actually, they do have some weapons to sell. They're fairly decent military and industrial complex, so to speak. And did Putin bite off more than he could chew by going into the Ukraine, thinking that he could do it pretty easily, maybe thinking that he could do it on the cheap, thinking that that the Ukraine would roll over, and because of the extreme distance from the United States and Europe being heavily in need of his natural gas and oil, that they wouldn't raise a stink either. Of course, it hasn't been quite so easy for Putin, but the idea that Professor Krugman espoused through somebody else was that perhaps one of the reasons why Putin got this whole thing going was because his economies are faltering at home. Things are not good there, so he's got to create a boogeyman and come into the rescue, and then he can be the big bad leader that he thinks that he is anyway. And this may not be paying out for him. Professor Krugman also points out towards the end of the article that, oh, by the way, even though it may not be economically right for him, and even though his popularity is going higher, that things could go downhill for Putin, especially if it costs a lot more money than what he thinks it would cost to get into. As I said, he wanted to do it on the cheap. But then here's the other thing. Is he going to go in, and is he going to stay in just to save face? That's a very, very important thing that we need to be very mindful of. He has an elaborate ego in terms of being satisfied, thinking that he can do it all. And it is not. It will not be a pretty thing all the way around. And as Professor Krugman points out, that Russia will lose also. The last thing that he points out in the article, I think that is also very disturbing on my part, is that there is a junta, there is a ruling coalition, there is a communist dictatorship in China, and their economy has been booming for the last 30 years, let's just say, and it cannot sustain itself. It is going to have to go down. It's going to have to go down at a certain point in time. And then, what will it be like to be able to rule rule China? And will they create a lot of straw men? Will they create a lot of situations where it'll be in their best interest to declare a war on one of their neighbors? mostly for the geography, but also to save face with the fact that they cannot continue to sustain their economy at the rate that it's being run at. Please stop.